I love that you work with Montessori. Right now, our oldest is in a Montessori program.
That's great.
So what I guess the first question is let's define what Montessori is supposed to be. Like what does like a pristine Montessori program look like and what are kind of the foundational cornerstones of their approach to education?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of very basic idea of Montessori, you'd think I could explain this more concisely, given that this is what I do for a living, but I'll do my best. The very basic idea is that if you prepare an environment in a certain way so that it's like very perfect for a child of a certain age, let's just take a 3-year-old, and like it's full of just the right number of materials and just the right types of materials where children can do real things and interact with them in a certain way. It's not overwhelming, it's not overstimulating, but it's also not understimulating. It's not full of things that they can't reach or don't understand, and it's full of child-sized furniture. And you have a teacher that really understands the materials in the classroom and kind of how they're supposed to be used and how to really inspire children to use them for real tasks, like really real tasks, like studying literacy or math, which 3-year-olds in Montessori classrooms do, or like making a cup of real tea, like things that you wouldn't think that a 3-year-old could do, but real things, not like having a tea party with a doll, but like making real tea for a guest. And then you let the child free in that environment. So it's all set up. The teacher knows what they're doing, and the environment is all set up. And under those circumstances, you can give the child a tremendous amount of latitude. You can say, "Do what you want." And it's not like there are no boundaries. It's not like if the child decides to trash the room that the teacher will do nothing. But in those circumstances, the child will tend to want to work on something. They'll want to pick something off of a shelf that's interesting to them, or they'll want to go to the teacher and ask for an explanation of how something is used. And they will work with it, with that material. And not just for a minute, like people think of 3-year-olds, oh, they'll like play with it for a minute, but for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, they'll really get into it and they'll concentrate and they'll lose themselves into it. They'll get into a kind of flow state. And that is the goal. I mean, that kind of getting children into that state of deep concentration is the goal of Montessori, and that's where the magic happens. So that's the basic idea. You set everything up, it's beautiful, it's perfect. You give the child a lot of freedom, and then they do this real meaningful work.
So it seems that I was actually surprised to learn that there's no official Montessori like accreditation. Like it's like almost anyone can slap it on like a toy
Yep.
or a school. So you have to be really diligent as to what you're either like buying or where you're placing your kid because there's not really anyone coming to make sure that like they're licensed to use that name, which to me seems really crazy. Is that the same for other types of like particular schools? Is it the same for like a Waldorf school or like a Socratic school? Do you know anything about the licensing there or is it the same?
It's definitely the same for Socratic, for kind of broad things like Socratic. I'm not I should know the answer to this. I'm not sure about Waldorf or Reggio. I seriously doubt they have trademarks, but they might. But yeah, Montessori is like it's a bunch of things, but it's like, I mean, you're right. Anybody can hang up a shingle and say, we're a Montessori school, and they can have literally nothing in the school that has anything to do with Montessori, and nobody will stop them from doing that, at least in most places in the US. There are a couple of states that have exceptions to that. And that's the US, by the way. Like in Australia, like you can't just do that. Like there's like a kind of governing body that has a partnership with the actual government. Yeah, it's not trademarked, and there's like in the Montessori world, we call Montessori schools that are like they suck and they're not really Montessori, but they call themselves Montessori. We call them Mono something or Mono sort of. We have pejorative terms for them, but the bottom line as a parent is that you've got to go in and judge. Like, does it look anything like the things that I said it looked like? And there's like a checklist that I sometimes give parents, like what to look for. Like, is there something on the wall that's at the adult's height in a toddler classroom and that's words? It's like an inspirational poster, like a quote from Montessori or something. It's like, who's that for? It's not
Mm.
for the child, right? So there's kind of things like that where if they're really obsessed about the environment, that you won't see in a good Montessori environment.
Is there a reason that you leaned into Montessori and not something like Waldorf or not something like a Stoic program?
Like, yeah, I mean, I used to be a philosophy professor. That's my kind
Uh-huh.
of first career, and I didn't love academia, and I was kind of looking for an out. And I've worked a lot with children, including teaching at preschools. And so one of the things that I was looking at was like, do I want to get into education? And I didn't know anything about Montessori. And one of my friends showed me a Montessori school. He flew me out to California, and I saw my first Montessori classroom. And it was like a love at first sight thing for me. I've seen a lot of different kinds of preschools. I've worked in preschools, like good progressive preschools. And Montessori is just, it's different. Like you don't get that. I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I mean, for me as a child, I don't know maybe you have something like this as a child. Like, I got really into Legos. Like, I would like work with Legos for like 2 hours, or like I'd play at the creek for like 4 hours, and my parents would have to drag me back inside and eat. Like, that kind of focus is in a Montessori classroom, except
Mhm.
it's not with Legos. It's with like sandpaper letters or golden beads that teach you math, or like making yourself a snack and cutting the banana yourself or peeling the orange yourself. It's that kind of focus on real things. And I don't think you get that in other approaches. Whatever other virtues they might have, I think Reggio is really good at creativity and family connections. Different approaches have different strengths, but for me, it was like the deep focus was the special thing. And I do think that that's really important and very often missing. Very, very often missing.
So you have, and I mean, I've experienced this when I go to like pick up my son, or if I come early and I get to kind of peek in at what he's doing, or the teacher will tell you what he like his. I love that they call it their work. I don't know why
Yeah.
I find it's really cute, but like what his work was that day, and it might be that he worked on like a real key and lock, and like sorting those out and figuring out what goes with what for 20, 30 an hour. And I'm like, it's really hard to see that focus in the house because the house is not set up like a Montessori classroom, right? And it could definitely be better, but it's nowhere near the setup that he has at his program. So, is that kind of undoing a lot of what people are paying for when they send their child to a Montessori program and they come back to the house and it's very different? Is that like, is that
No.
a problem, or is that adjusting them to the real world and different circumstances? And
I mean, it's neither. I don't know. So it's a lot of, like, you can set up your house like very in a very, very Montessori way. If you ever go on Montessori TikTok, you will immediately feel terrible as a normal parent, because you're like, what the hell? Like, how is this 2-year-old using a Keurig and making her parents coffee every morning? It's ridiculous things. And I think a lot of them are like actually fake and kind of weirdly edited. But
Mhm.
you can do a lot to set up your home, but and we do a lot at home, but we don't do nearly as much as they do in a Montessori school. So we like have a shelf for our daughter where there's like, I mean, multiple shelves, but like in the kitchen, there's a special shelf where she has her own plates and bowls and cups, and she has a paper towel roll that she can use to clean up messes. And she uses it. I mean, it's helpful to have it. She uses it a lot of the time. Is it the same kind of maniacal level of empowerment and independence that you get in a Montessori classroom? No. And she doesn't exhibit the same behaviors at home, though there's some overlap. I like paying somebody to do it for me. I mean, the kind of idea of Montessori school is that you get this a few hours a day of this very intense work, as the teacher described it. And I like that that term resonates with you. Does the child's entire life have to be like that? No. Like, they can run around, they can play, they can be silly, they can watch TV. Like, it's okay and it's good. A lot of those things are good. It's just this special period of focused work is not usually something that happens naturally unless you really try. And that's the Montessori school's job. That's how I think about it.